Tamam should, 2 words on a torn scrap. It is finished. They were hidden in a secret pocket on a dead man found on an Adelaide beach in 1948. No ID, every clothing label cut, no clear cause of death. Detectives traced the scrap to a book of poetry, found a phone number and a line of letters, but not a name. This is the Somerton man. Tamam should. It is finished. Those 2 words sat on a tiny scrap of paper, hidden in a little fob pocket that no one noticed at first. Months earlier, on the morning of December 1st, 1948, a well-dressed stranger was found lying on the sand at Somerton Beach in Adelaide. No wallet nor ID. Every clothing label neatly cut away. He looked more asleep than dead, and that made it stranger. The police worked it like a puzzle. A public appeal brought in a worn copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, with its final page torn out. The scrap matched. On the inside back cover, pressed faintly into the paper, were the ghosts of handwriting. A local phone number. Another number that went nowhere. A short line of letters that looked like a cipher. The message has resisted clean answers ever since. Experts have tried to read it as code, poem, initials, even a private aid memoir. Nothing has stuck in a way investigators accept. The phone number led to a woman nearby, a thread that complicated the story without tying it off. From the start, people called it one of Australia's deepest mysteries. The timing fed the fire, coming right as the Cold War began to harden. A man with no name, possible poison with no clear trace, a book of poetry turned into a clue, a line of letters that still will not speak. If you wanted a case to invite spy theories and late-night arguments, this was it. That is the stage. A beach, a body, a single phrase torn from a book. Everything after that is a long search for a name and a reason, and the feeling that the answers are still just out of reach. But how was he discovered? Just after dawn, a couple spotted a man sitting back against the seawall, legs straight, feet neatly crossed. He looked asleep. A half-smoked cigarette rested on his collar. When police checked his pockets, they found ordinary bits of travel and habit. An unused rail ticket, a city bus ticket, a small American comb, juicy fruit, a cigarette pack hiding a different brand of smokes, and a box of matches. People had noticed someone in that same spot the previous evening. One pair saw him lift his right arm and let it fall. Another watched for half an hour and saw no movement, figured he was sleeping despite the mosquitoes. Someone at the top of the steps was seen looking down at him. When officers arrived, his pose had barely changed. Years later, a new witness claimed a well-dressed man had been carrying another person along that stretch of beach the night before. He looked like a British man in his early 40s, and he was in great shape, about 180 centimetres tall, grey eyes, fair to ginger hair with a bit of silver at the temples, broad shoulders, narrow waist, smooth hands, nails clean, his big and little toes angled together, like someone used to tight boots or dance shoes, calves high and defined, the kind you see on people who wear heels or train in ballet. He was dressed sharp, white shirt, red, white and blue tie, brown trousers, socks and shoes, a brown knit, and a grey-brown double-breasted jacket in an American cut. Every clothing tag had been cut out. No hat, wallet or ID. Clean-shaven. His dental chart matched no records, and early on the police leaned toward no foul play. A full post-mortem followed. The pathologist's notes read like this. The heart was of normal size and normal in every way. Small vessels not commonly observed in the brain were easily discernible with congestion. There was congestion of the pharynx, and the gullet was covered with whitening of superficial layers of the mucosa with a patch of ulceration in the middle of it. The stomach was deeply congested. There was congestion in the second half of the duodenum. There was blood mixed with the food in the stomach. Both kidneys were congested, and the liver contained a great excess of blood in its vessels. The spleen was strikingly large, about 3 times normal size. There was destruction of the centre of the liver lobules revealed under the microscope. Acute gastritis hemorrhage, extensive congestion of the liver and spleen, and the congestion to the brain. In plain English, that means heavy congestion throughout the body, bleeding in the stomach, an enlarged spleen and damage in the liver. That pattern led doctors to consider a fast-acting toxin, but tests of the time did not identify a specific agent. His last meal? A pasty, about 3 to 4 hours before he died. Lab work found nothing obvious in his system. Dr. John Dwyer still told the inquest this didn't look natural. He suspected a fast-acting poison, maybe a barbiturate or another soluble sedative. Not from the pasty. The coroner couldn't lock anything down. No name, no clear cause, and no proof the man people saw the night before was the same person. With no ID, police had the body embalmed on the 10th of December 1948 to preserve it. They said it was the first time they'd taken that step. Then came the curveball. Station staff at Adelaide's railway cloakroom turned up a brown suitcase on the 14th of January 1949. The tag was gone. Records showed it was checked in after 11 a.m. on the 30th of November. Police were sure it belonged to the man from the beach. Inside was a mix of tidy clothing and odd tools, a red check dressing gown, red felt slippers, 4 pairs of underwear, pajamas, shaving gear and light brown trousers with sand in the cuffs. There was an electrician's screwdriver, a table knife cut down to a sharp tool, pointed scissors, a small square of zinc used as a sheath for the blades, and a stencil brush like the ones merchant seamen used to mark cargo. One item mattered most. A card of Barber orange waxed thread, an uncommon type not sold in Australia, exactly matched the thread used to repair a pocket lining on the man's trousers. That tied the case to him. All the usual clothing labels had been cut out, but 3 names slipped through. T. Keane on a tie, Keane on a laundry bag, and Keane on a singlet, plus 3 dry cleaning marks. Investigators figured the tags were either missed or left as misdirection. With rationing still on, tags were common and often removed from second-hand buys. What stood out was what wasn't there. No spare socks or letters, just pencils and blank stationery. Searches for any missing T. Keane in English-speaking countries went nowhere, and the dry cleaning marks didn't hit. A coat in the suitcase had American-style construction and hadn't been imported, suggesting he'd been to the US or bought it off someone who had. Train checks pointed to him arriving overnight from Melbourne, Sydney, or Port Augusta. Police think he shaved and cleaned up near the station baths, bought a 10:50 a.m. ticket to Henley Beach that he never used, checked the suitcase, then caught a city bus to Glenelg. There was no note that the station facilities were closed that day. Let's get deeper into the inquest. Quick explainer, an inquest is a formal court inquiry into a sudden or unexplained death. The coroner hears evidence, weighs expert opinions and writes findings. It is not a criminal trial. Coroner Thomas Erskine Cleland opened the case soon after the body was found, then pushed the formal hearing to 17th of June 1949. He re-examined the remains and a few details bugged him. The shoes were very clean and looked freshly polished, which did not match the idea that this man had been walking Glenelg all day. That fed a working theory that the body was placed on the beach after death. It would also fit the lack of visible signs you often see with certain poisons, like vomiting or convulsions, at the scene. He could not prove the placement theory. Witnesses believed the man they saw the night before was the same person, but no one got a clear look at his face. Identity remained a blank. Cleland called Professor Cedric Stanton Hicks, a physiology and pharmacology expert from the University of Adelaide. Hicks testified that some drugs in a particular family could kill with a very small oral dose and leave little to find in routine tests. He wrote 2 names on a slip that went in as Exhibit C18. The court kept those names from the public for decades because at the time you could buy them easily. They were later disclosed as digitalis and wabane, both cardiac glycosides. Hicks noted the absence of vomiting did not rule them out. If death came several hours after the last observed movement, around 7 p.m, a large dose could still leave little trace. Early on, Cleland said he was prepared to find death by poison, probably a glucoside, and not accidental. He could not say whether it was taken by the man himself or given by someone else. In the end, he could not fix an official cause. He even remarked that if the body had been carried to that spot, many of the oddities would make sense. After the inquest, investigators made a plaster cast of the head and shoulders. With no name and no confirmed cause, officials started calling it an unparalleled mystery and warned the answer might never be known. The tiny scrap that said "Tamam should" came from a hidden fob pocket in his trousers. Librarians traced the phrase to the last page of the Rubaiyat. The reverse side of that page was blank, so police put out a photo of the scrap and searched for a copy with the same blank back. A man later brought in a 1941 Whitcomb and Toombs edition printed in New Zealand. Investigators referred to him publicly as Ronald Francis. Accounts differ on when he found it. Some say a week or two before the body, others say just after. Most versions place the book in an open-roof car on Jetty Road in Glenelg, either on the back seat or in the rear footwell. Tests confirmed the scrap was torn from that book. On the inside back cover were faint indentations, a local phone number, another number, and 5 short lines of capital letters. One line was crossed out. The first letter looked like a W to most readers, not an M. There is also a small X above one letter. It reads like a code, but no clear key has ever surfaced. People tried. At first, some thought it was a foreign language, then a cipher. Code experts at the time failed. In 1978, defense cryptographers said the text was too short to solve and might be meaningless notes. Later ideas leaned toward an initialism, each letter the first letter of a word. Retired detective Jerry Feltus suggested the last line could point to South Australia and Mosley Street. Derek Abbott's group also favoured the initials theory. In 2014, linguist John Relling found the pattern fits English initials but likely shorthand that cannot be reconstructed now. In the back of the Rubaiyat was a local phone number that led police to a nurse, Jessica Ellen Jo Thompson, known as Jestin, who lived on Mosley Street in Glenelg, a short walk from the beach. She told detectives she did not know the dead man or why he would have her number. She also mentioned that late in 1948, an unknown man tried to visit her and asked a neighbour about her. Years later, retired detective Jerry Feltus wrote that when he interviewed her in 2002, she seemed evasive, and he believed she knew who the man was. Her daughter, Kate, said in a 2014 TV interview that she believed the same. In 1949, Jessica asked police not to record her name publicly, saying a connection would hurt her reputation. They agreed, which made later work harder. Reports and books used pseudonyms like Jestin, and some researchers thought her real name might even help decode the letters in the book. When shown the plaster bust of the unknown man, she said she could not identify him. Detective Sergeant Lionel Lean described her reaction as shocked, almost faint. Paul Lawson, who made the cast, recorded she looked once, then turned away and would not look again. Jessica also told police she had owned a copy of the Rubaiyat during the war and had given one to Lieutenant Alf Boxall in 1945. After the war, she moved, married, and replied to a letter from Boxall to say she was now married. Research later showed her husband, Prosper Thompson, finalised his earlier divorce in 1949 and married Jessica in mid-1950. There is no evidence Boxall contacted her after 1945. For a time, police suspected Boxall was the dead man. In July 1949, they found him alive in Sydney, working at the Randwick bus depot. His copy of the Rubaiyat still had the final page intact, with Tamam Shud in place. Inside, he had Jessica's inscription, Jestin, and verse 70. The phone number gave the case a human link, but it did not give a name. So now the biggest question is, who was this man, and what happened to him? Adelaide woke to the story in 2 very different tones. The advertiser tucked it into a small page 3 brief the next morning, even floating a wrong name, E.C. Johnson of Paynham. The news splashed it on the front page and leaned into the mystery, describing the well-dressed stranger and the odd details that didn't add up. As the weeks passed, the coverage got more poetic and more pointed. One writer, nodding to the Rubaiyat, said the Somerton man had left nothing in the glass but speculation. Editorials called it one of Australia's great unsolved cases. If experts could not find a trace of an agent, they argued, maybe the substance was rare, and the hand that used it belonged to someone who knew exactly what they were doing. There were many early identifications that went nowhere. The morning after, one paper floated the name E.C. Johnson, as previously mentioned. The real Johnson walked into a station and said, "Not me." That same day, a morgue photo hit the front page and the phones lit up. Tips poured in. By the weekend, police had checked his prints against South Australian records and got nothing. They started digging through military files after a pub regular claimed he had shared a drink with a man who flashed a pension card with the name Solomonson. January brought a run of confident IDs. 2 people said the body was 63-year-old ex-woodcutter Robert Walsh. Another man changed his mind midday and agreed. Police thought the age was off and the hands did not look like someone who had swung an axe lately. A second look killed the match. The scar was wrong and the legs were the wrong build. By early February, there were 8 positive IDs. A friend from Darwin, a station worker, a seaman, even a Swedish lead. Detectives chased laundry marks that looked Melbourne style and published the photo in Victoria. 28 claims came in, all collapsed. A sailor named Tommy Reed was briefly suspected, until his shipmates viewed the body and said no chance. By 1953, the tally of public solutions hit 251. The only clue that kept any value was still the clothing. Things kept getting stranger with the Magnuson detour. 6 months later, another tragedy pulled attention north to Largs Bay. A 2-year-old boy, Clive Magnuson, was found dead in the Sand Hills. His father, Keith, lay nearby, alive but in bad shape, and was later moved to a hospital. The family had been missing 4 days. A local man said he found them after dreaming the spot the night before. The coroner could not fix a cause for the boy, but did not think it was natural. Soon the boy's mother, Roma, reported threats from a masked man in a battered cream car, telling her to stay away from police. Calls went to a community leader and the acting mayor with similar warnings. Police suspected hoax calls. Roma believed it tied back to her husband, trying to link the Somerton man to a co-worker named Carl Thompson. Nothing solid came of it. South Australia police sent the photo and prints overseas. The FBI could not match the fingerprints. Scotland Yard had no answers. The case stayed open, the name stayed blank. In 1949, the Somerton man was laid to rest at West Terrace Cemetery in Adelaide. The Salvation Army ran the service. The South Australian Grandstand Bookmakers Association paid the bill so he would not end up in a pauper's grave. Then the strange bits kept coming. Flowers started appearing on the plot. Police stopped a woman seen leaving the grave. She said she knew nothing about the man. A hotel lead surfaced. Ina Harvey, receptionist at the Strathmore across from the station, recalled a quiet guest in room 21 or 23 around the time of the case. He checked out on 30th of November carrying a small black case, the type a doctor or musician might carry. An employee peeked inside and later described something that looked like a needle. Claims kept popping up. In 1959, a prisoner in New Zealand said he knew the name. Nothing solid came of it. In 1978, ABC's Inside Story revisited the mystery. Reporter Stuart Littlemore interviewed Alf Boxall, who had nothing new, and Paul Lawson, the technician who made the plaster bust. Lawson would not say if anyone had ever identified the face. In 1994, John Harbour Phillips, Chief Justice of Victoria, reviewed the medical evidence and argued the pattern fit digitalis poisoning. Organs engorged, no clear natural disease, Nothing obvious at autopsy. Former South Australian Chief Superintendent Len Brown later said he thought the man was from a Warsaw Pact country, which could explain the dead ends on identity. What remains today is thin. The Police Historical Society keeps the plaster bust with a few hairs. Embalming ruined much of the DNA. The suitcase was destroyed in 1986. Some witness statements have gone missing. The mystery got older, the paper trail got smaller. This case breeds theories. The most famous is the spy angle. The timing sits right in the early Cold War. Adelaide had sensitive sites like Radium Hill and the Woomera Test Range. Australia's security services were being reshaped, and ASIO arrived the next year. A man with no ID, labels cut, a book scrap and a strange letter block was perfect fuel. Even Alf Boxall, who had wartime work around special units, got dragged into it. When asked, he shrugged it off as a melodramatic idea. Another line chased an old identity card. In 2011, a family turned up a World War I era Siemens ID for an H.C. Reynolds. A forensic look said the ear shape and even a cheek mole lined up well with the Somerton bust. Archives in the US and UK could not confirm the man behind that card. Some researchers think the card belonged to a Tasmanian named Horace Charles Reynolds, who died in 1953, which would rule him out. Interesting likeness, no hard link. Then there is Jestin. In 2013, relatives spoke on TV. Jessica Thompson's daughter said her mother admitted lying to police and that higher-ups knew who the man was. She added that her mother spoke Russian and mixed with migrants, which kept the spy talk alive. Other family members suggested the unknown man might be the father of Jessica's son and pushed for exhumation to test DNA. A University of Adelaide professor backed that request. Not everyone in the family agreed. That is why the story keeps moving. Each path looks promising for a moment, then stops short. The spy lens, the mystery ID card, the family threads. Plenty of smoke, no single flame that answers who he was and why he died there. Quick note, exhumation means reopening a grave to recover remains for new testing, usually DNA. Interest in the case kept building. In 2011, Attorney General John Rao said no to digging up the body, arguing there was no public interest beyond curiosity. Retired Detective Jerry Feltus also doubted it would help families, noting many people in that era changed names and moved. In 2019, the stance flipped. Attorney General Vicky Chapman approved an exhumation with costs covered by interested parties, aiming to compare DNA against a possible granddaughter. On 19th of May 2021, the grave was opened. Police said the remains were in reasonable condition and deeper than expected. The work sat under Operation Persevere and Operation Persist, South Australia's long-term effort to identify historical remains. Forensic Science SA planned full DNA extraction, noting modern methods are far ahead of what was possible in the late 1940s, and that they would use every tool available to try to close the case. In 2009, a University of Adelaide group, led by Derek Abbott, took a fresh swing at the case. 2 tracks, crack the letters in the rubaiyat and push for DNA by reopening the grave. On the code, the team ran letter frequency checks and found patterns that did not look random. The layout echoed the book's quatrain rhythm, which led to one-time pad ideas, but the text is so short that you would likely need the exact edition that supplied the torn page. With the original book lost, they compared other Fitzgerald printings and landed on a simpler view. Each letter is probably the first letter of a word. Abbott also chased physical clues. He tracked period Barber thread packaging, looking for where that orange wax type was sold. He noted that official autopsy reports from 1948 and 1949 were missing, and that Cleland's archive notes did not cover this case. The team highlighted rare traits. Photos suggested the man's upper ear hollow was larger than the lower one, seen in roughly 1 to 2% of Caucasian people. Dental experts thought he had hypodontia of both lateral incisors, also about 2%. A photo of Jessica Thompson's son Robin appeared to show the same 2 traits, which fueled talk of a family link. Media speculated, but everyone agreed only DNA could settle it. Abbott later contacted Robin's daughter, Rachel Egan. They married in 2010 and started a family. Rachel's DNA work pointed toward Prosper Thompson's side of the family, which complicated the simple narrative that the unknown man was Robin's father. To spark new leads, Abbott released an artist's impression in 2013. In 2017, his team found a few suitable hairs preserved in the plaster bust. In 2018, they reported a mitochondrial DNA result, haplogroup H4A1A1A, seen in about 1% of Europeans. Useful as a line of inquiry, but mtDNA comes only from the maternal line, so it could not confirm or rule out specific paternity on its own. Net effect, Abbott kept the case moving with codework, phenotype clues and DNA pushes, setting the table for the later exhumation and modern testing.
It's been decades. Are there possible identifications? The biggest break came in July 2022.
Researcher Derek Abbott and genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick said the unknown man matched Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker from Footscray, born 16th November 1905. They worked from hair preserved in the plaster bust, built a DNA profile, then used genetic genealogy to find matches on both his father's and mother's sides. South Australia police said they were cautiously optimistic while they continued their own work. At first, there were no known photos of Webb. A 1921 Swinburne Tech Team photo showed a sea web, and later an album surfaced with clear family pictures from the 1920s that matched the face better. Media also noted a resemblance to Webb's brother, Roy. Abbott and Fitzpatrick assembled Webb's background from records and family accounts. Youngest of 6, trained as an electrical instrument maker, married Dorothy Doff Robertson in 1941. Described at home as quiet and solitary, fond of poetry but also volatile under stress. The Rubaiyat link fits his taste for verse. He liked betting on horses, and Abbott has floated that the letters in the book might be initials of horse names. After a difficult period in the mid-1940s, Webb left Melbourne. Family believed he later spent time in Cottesloe. By 1951, Dorothy was living in South Australia and filed for divorce the next year. Abbott has suggested Webb may have travelled to Adelaide to find her. One practical link to the clothes. Dorothy's brother, John Keane, had items hinting at travel to North America. Keane lived a short drive from Webb. That could explain why garments tied to the case looked American and why Keane labels appeared among the effects. DNA steps continued. In 2017, hairs from the bust yielded mitochondrial DNA in haplogroup H4A1A1A, found in about 1% of Europeans. Later family testing placed Rachel Egan, Abbott's wife and Robin Thompson's daughter, on the Prosper Thompson branch, not as a direct descendant of the unknown man, which complicated early assumptions about parentage. Not everyone agrees on Webb as the final answer. In January 2022, a separate tip named Austrian milliner Karl or Charles Joseph Halbun. Authorities have not adopted that view. Forensic Science South Australia has said they would comment when their investigation is complete. What Abbott and Fitzpatrick argue, based on records and the autopsy pattern, is that Webb likely died after ingesting a toxic substance. They frame it as a personal decline after a string of family losses, without proof of a third party. Police have not issued a formal cause.
Whoever he was, a man ended up alone on a beach and became a question mark for generations.
Behind the code talk and theories was a person who lived, loved, worked and wore a suit someone pressed that morning. If the DNA work is right, and he was Carl Charles Webb, then he has his name back. If not, he still deserves dignity. So we leave him with respect. Flowers on a quiet plot, a promise to tell his story carefully, and a simple hope that the last chapter lands on a real name, so the mystery can rest and the man can be remembered as more than a case. Thanks for watching this episode of Midnight Crimes. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe and share. And if you want more, consider joining the Patreon. It's just $5 a month and you'll get access to all exclusive videos, including future ones. This week's Patreon episode dives into the Watcher House,
A family stalked by eerie letters from someone watching their every move, with the mystery still unsolved. Your support means everything. Thank you.